The diner buzzed with the low hum of morning conversation and the clatter of utensils on plates. Among the patrons sat Charles "Charlie" Harris, a retired Marine and Vietnam veteran. Dressed in a faded bomber jacket adorned with military patches, his steel gray hair peeked out from beneath a worn baseball cap embroidered with USMC. He sipped his black coffee quietly, flipping through a local newspaper. But before we dive into what happens next, I'd love to know, where are you tuning in from today? Drop a comment below. The man behind the counter, a middle-aged owner named Benny, knew Charlie well. "Morning, Charlie," Benny said with a nod. "How's life treating you?" "Fair as it gets, Benny," Charlie replied, his voice gravelly but kind. The bell over the diner door jingled sharply, interrupting the calm. A tall, square-jawed police officer in a freshly pressed uniform strode in, his sunglasses glinting under the fluorescent lights. Officer Rourke, a rookie with something to prove, or so he believed. He surveyed the room, his eyes locking on Charlie. Rourke's demeanor shifted. His lips curled into a sneer as he approached the counter. "Hey, old man," he barked, his voice loud enough to draw the attention of nearby diners. "What are you doing here? Loitering?" Charlie looked up, confused. "Just having my coffee, officer. Same as anyone else." "That so?" Rourke leaned in closer, his tone mocking. "You sure you're not here to stir up trouble?" The tension in the room thickened. Benny stepped forward, trying to defuse the situation. "Officer, Charlie's a regular. He's a good man, served in the Marines, decorated veteran." Rourke scoffed. "I don't care if he claims to be the president. He looks out of place to me." Charlie's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "Son, I've seen men like you before. You don't intimidate me." That was the wrong thing to say. Rourke's face reddened with anger, and before anyone could react, he grabbed Charlie's arm roughly. "You think you're better than me? Let's see how tough you are down at the station." Gasps erupted from the onlookers. Benny shouted, "Hey, let go of him! You're making a mistake!" But Rourke didn't listen. He shoved Charlie against the counter, drawing cries of protest from the other patrons. Charlie didn't fight back. He merely stood tall, his dignity intact despite the indignity of the situation. And then, the bell over the door jingled again. The room fell silent as a towering figure in a sharp, dark uniform stepped inside. Captain Elaine Harris, the precinct's commanding officer, and Charlie's daughter, scanned the scene with piercing eyes. Her presence was magnetic, her authority undeniable. "Officer Rourke," she said, her voice calm but icy. "What do you think you're doing?" Rourke froze, his hand still gripping Charlie's arm. "Ma'am, this man," Elaine interrupted, her voice rising slightly, "is my father." The color drained from Rourke's face. He stammered, I didn't know, Captain." "You didn't bother to know," Elaine shot back, stepping closer. "You walked in here, saw an elderly black man, and decided he didn't belong. Am I wrong?" Rourke opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out. Elaine's gaze shifted to her father. "Are you all right, Dad?" Charlie nodded, though his eyes betrayed a mixture of hurt and pride. "I'm fine, Elaine. Just disappointed this is still happening." Elaine turned back to Rourke. "Officer, you've just assaulted a decorated Marine, a man who's given more to this country than you ever will. Turn in your badge and gun, now." The room erupted into whispers as Rourke reluctantly removed his badge and sidearm, placing them on the counter. "You're suspended pending further review," Elaine continued, her tone unforgiving. "And believe me, there will be consequences." As Rourke slinked out of the diner, Elaine addressed the patrons. "Thank you for standing by my father. This isn't just about him, it's about respect and justice for everyone." Benny placed a fresh cup of coffee in front of Charlie. "On the house, Charlie. You've earned it." Charlie smiled faintly, his daughter's hand resting on his shoulder. For all the battles he'd fought, this one reminded him of the ongoing fight for dignity and equality. And in that moment, surrounded by allies, he knew he wasn't alone. Elaine Harris took a deep breath, steadying herself after the tense encounter. She glanced around the diner, noting the mixed expressions on the patrons' faces: relief, admiration, and lingering outrage. Turning to her father, She knelt slightly to meet his eyes. "Dad, I'm sorry," she said softly. "You should never have to deal with this, not after all you've done for this country." Charlie shook his head, his expression unreadable. "It's not your fault, Elaine. The world doesn't change overnight, but it sure does help when folks like you stand up and set things right." Elaine straightened and turned to the crowd. "I appreciate everyone who spoke up today. If any of you have statements about what you saw, please contact me at the precinct." She handed out her card to a few nearby patrons, who nodded in agreement. As she finished, an older white woman in the corner stood and approached Charlie. She looked nervous, wringing her hands, but determined. "Mr. Harris," she began hesitantly, "I just wanted to say thank you for your service and for your patience. People like that officer make us all look bad. I hope you'll accept my apology on behalf of, well, people like me who've stayed quiet too long." Charlie studied her for a moment before offering a small, warm smile. "Ma'am, it's never too late to speak up. I appreciate your kindness." The woman's shoulders relaxed, and she returned to her seat. Later that day, Elaine and Charlie sat together on the front porch of Charlie's modest home. The warm Atlanta sun bathed the neighborhood in golden light, and the scent of blooming jasmine drifted through the air. "You handled that well, Elaine," Charlie said, sipping sweet tea. "Your mother would be proud." Elaine leaned back in her chair, her face softening. "Mom always said you were the reason she had the strength to fight for what was right. I think I got it from both of you." Charlie chuckled. "Maybe. But I'm proud of you, Elaine. Not just for being my daughter, but for being a leader who stands by her principles." Elaine hesitated before speaking. "What happened today, Dad? It's not an isolated incident. I see it in the reports, the complaints. Rourke's behavior isn't unique, and it's not just about race. It's about power being used irresponsibly." Charlie nodded slowly. "So, what are you going to do about it?" Elaine smiled faintly. "I'm going to overhaul the training programs, start a community advisory board, and make it mandatory for officers to participate in regular bias training. It won't solve everything, but it's a start." "That's my girl," Charlie said, pride shining in his eyes. The next morning, news of the diner incident spread quickly, thanks to a video posted online by one of the patrons. It showed Officer Rourke confronting Charlie, followed by Elaine's powerful takedown of his actions. The video went viral, sparking a heated discussion about racial bias and respect for veterans. Elaine didn't shy away from the attention. She used the moment to address the city, holding a press conference where she reaffirmed her commitment to justice and accountability within the police force. Meanwhile, Charlie received countless messages of support from veterans groups, civil rights organizations, and everyday citizens who admired his quiet dignity in the face of adversity. As for Officer Rourke, his suspension turned into a termination after an internal review revealed a pattern of similar complaints. The incident became a turning point in the precinct's culture, forcing officers to confront their own biases and encouraging the community to demand better. A week later, Charlie returned to the diner. As he entered, the patrons erupted into applause, and Benny greeted him with a wide grin. "Charlie, you're a hero around here now," Benny said, sliding over a fresh cup of coffee. "This one's on the house forever." Charlie laughed, shaking his head. "Benny, you'll go broke if you keep giving me free coffee." "Worth every penny," Benny replied. As Charlie sat down, Elaine walked in, still in her uniform. She joined her father, her presence drawing respectful nods from the patrons. "Ready to face another day, Dad?" she asked, her tone teasing. "Always, kid," Charlie replied with a grin. And with that, father and daughter shared a quiet moment of victory, knowing their fight for justice was far from over. But together, they were ready for whatever came next. Leave a comment if you enjoyed this story. It doesn't cost you anything, and you'll make me very happy. Thank you, and I look forward to your like.